Good evening, everyone. This is Divya Jain from BioAngels, and I welcome you to the sixth session of the Biotech and Healthtech Angel Investment Masterclass. This is a series of six masterclasses by industry leaders to help you understand the angel investing in biotech and healthtech sectors. These sessions will help you to speed up on the dynamics of the angel investing ecosystem and emerging practices with the help of trusted experts and curated content as you take the plunge into the world of investment. To introduce you to BioAngels, it is a unique partnership between BIRAG and BIRAG, that is an enterprise of the Department of Biotechnology and Indian Angel Network, which is India's single largest horizontal platform for seed and early stage investing. It is India's first sector focused angel investor group in biotech, health tech, medtech, pharma, clean tech, and agri tech space that brings money, mentoring, and market access, echoing ION's genetics. It brings a heady mix of private investor groups, driving the investment process along with the access to domain and tech experts embedded in the government ecosystem through BIRAG. Through this masterclass, we also invite angel investors to join BioAngels and discover and get early access to a pool of high potential startups in these sectors witnessing exponential growth. Moving on to today's topic, Investor Outlook, the funding landscape in biotech and health tech startup ecosystem. So the pandemic has given a big boost to India's health tech and biotech ecosystem. India's bioeconomy in 2021 registered 14.1% growth over 2020 and was valued at $80.12 billion in 2021. This brings immense opportunity for investors to place their bets in these sectors as the Government of India has set out an ambitious target of $150 billion bioeconomy by 2025. Investors who rarely look beyond the software sectors are getting excited by the opportunity. Unlike other sectors, it could take 5 to 10 years to bring healthcare product to market, but there is a framework today and the government has also made conscious efforts in building a pipeline for entrepreneurs. Today we have with us a seasoned angel investor who has been actively investing in biotech, health tech space and will be sharing his perspective on the funding landscape. Today, we are joined by Mr. Naganand Duraswamy. Naganand is a serial entrepreneur turned investor. After exiting his most recent startup, he founded Idea Spring Capital to fund and actively support product innovation startups. He enjoys working with entrepreneurs who have the vision and passion to build products for the global markets. Naganand is very well networked and respected in the startup ecosystem, and he actively participates in various organizations focusing on entrepreneurship and innovation. Naganand has co-authored a book on IPSec published by Prentice Hall. I welcome you, sir, for joining us today for this masterclass. Over to you,
Thank you,
sir.
Divya, and good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining on a Friday evening. And Divya, thanks for calling me. Just a quick introduction. I'm an investor. We have a fund called Idea Spring Capital, which is a AIF2 fund, which we are in the second fund now. And we typically invest in startups pre-revenue, focused on product innovation and also life sciences now. So in fund one, we did one life science company called Immune. In fund two, we are looking to do two or three more companies in the life sciences and biotech space. And the reason I say biosciences and health tech, even though I don't have any experience per se in the sciences, is because I honestly and truly believe that India has the capacity and the capability to really bring products out in this space. If you look at the evolution, it started from services to B2C companies to B2B companies, which we are doing now. And I think the next phase will be life sciences companies. But we will, in today's discussion, we'll go through some of the challenges that I see, in spite of being very optimistic about this whole space. Needless to say, there's a lot of challenges, in multiple different scenarios. And it's always good for all of us as investors to understand what are the challenges that we face and on how best to overcome those challenges, because at the end of the day, like we did in B2B companies, where we said India will be the product capital of the world, which is happening now. I think we should have the same level of confidence in also saying, we will emerge as one of the key players in this segment as well. So I'll give you my perspective and thoughts. Obviously, I don't want to talk for long, so I'll talk for over 20, 25 minutes. And then leave it open for questions. I think it's, we learn a lot more when we ask ourselves questions than a monologue by one person. So that's the format we follow in today's talk. In terms of the discussion flow, I mean, I thought I'll give you my perspective of what I see in the landscape, and also positives and negatives in this particular space, health tech. And health tech actually is a little better than life sciences / biotech, because health tech is more closer to IT, which people do understand. But in bio and life, I think it's a little different. And what's the way forward? What do we look forward to going forward, right? So this kind of what I had in terms of flow. So when I look at any company, if I look at 4 factors, but I've added the 5th last factor, policy, because we are talking about bio here. So first of all, is the idea good? And if the idea is good, then we have the talent. Founders are good, and the team is good to build on that idea. And post doing that, then you say, all right, is there capital available to bring this product to fruition? Get to the market. And then once you have built the product and you have the capital, then does the market exist for somebody to actually buy these products in large numbers for this company to have a good financial outcome, right? So I think when at IdeaSpring, when we evaluate any company, these are the 4 fundamental parameters we look at. But when we look at bio, then the 5th factor comes into play, which is policy, because it's regulated. Unlike SaaS companies or other product companies selling hardware, in this case, since it can be used by humans, and there's a whole bunch of regulatory affairs that one has to basically adhere to, and that creates complication in kind of deciding at what stage of the company you want to invest in, what are the phases they have to go through, what are the risks associated with each phase. So a whole bunch of unknowns come into play. So I've also added policy. When we look at life sciences space, this becomes very important in terms of, in what stage they are in and what risks do we have, and so on and so forth, right? But, if you don't have all these 5 coherently coming together, it's very, very hard to, invest in a startups or build the ecosystem. So we watch this very carefully at IdeaSpring whenever we have to invest in any company, and the same will hold true even for the companies we look at in the health tech and the biotech space. So quick landscape snapshot of what we are seeing, right? If you look at these are all numbers, and I'm not going to, you can see the numbers, but, health tech startups in India have picked up significantly. It can be either purely software driven, it can be medical devices, it can be medical devices for consumers or medical devices for hospitals. And then that segment is I think, little better understood than when you come to pure bio space, whether it is building, biotech companies, building or pharma companies. So whenever there's a software component, or mostly software component in terms of computational biology, I think those problems are better understood, as opposed to when you do something like autoimmune, where they are finding cure for autoimmune skin diseases. It's a drug, although it is you apply it, you're not ingesting it, you're just applying it. Still a whole bunch of regulations, the gestation time, what it takes to bring the product to the market, a whole bunch of questions that come in. So in spite of it, we are seeing a good, healthy increase in the number of biotech startups, which is very good. But I think health tech, in my opinion, health tech will first come to the fore, and then that will be followed by biotech, because I think that's a natural progression in terms of where we would see startups evolving. And funding in the biotech sector, of course, this year is an aberration in everything. But normally, if you look at the numbers, there is decent amount of companies getting funded. But I will not, like I say, when we'll discuss it in the end, the numbers, don't mean much, because early stage companies are getting funded. But I think the challenge in India today that we will talk about later is what happens when you come to the later stages of the funding. But the good news is the sector is picking up, and it's exciting a whole bunch of us. And I see some 60+ people being on the call on a Friday evening, listening to somebody who has little knowledge of this. So that shows there's a lot of enthusiasm. So I think very optimistic that hence this sector can really take off. And health tech, obviously, if you look at the numbers between biotech and health tech, obviously health tech is a lot more in terms of the number, and rightfully so. Only because of the fact that it get borders with IT as well, which software and hardware, which everybody understands much better. So if you talk to, at least in the investment community in India today, there's a lot more people who understand software and hardware than people who can understand life sciences or specific aspects of bioengineering or pharma. So I think that knowledge has to build. A lot of things have to happen for the bio sector to pick up and come in par with many other things. But I think the good news is there is a start, and hopefully we'll see a lot more of this coming our way going forward. And if you look at the number of VCs who have invested in at least one deal, the number is not bad. It's 218 across multiple. This is across or a whole bunch of period. But at least 218 VCs have gotten, or funds, I should say, because multiple funds exist within a VC. There are about 700 plus funds in India today, AI funds. So out of which, a reasonable amount of them have had one investment at least, which is not a bad start. A lot more to be done, particularly in the later stages. But Healthtech obviously is looking much better compared to Biotech. And the other important aspect that I think is very, very important from a landscape and from an ecosystem perspective is the incubator. I think that I would have to definitely credit the government in pushing the biotech space much harder than I've seen them push any other space. If you look at what happened with respect to available, the reason why so IT services took off was because of STPI, which is an organization that the government created that provided tax benefits. This was actually nothing to do with technology, nothing to do with support for business, no such thing, no mentoring. But they created the tax structure that enabled these companies to really take off. And that's why IT services took off. And that kind of fed into a lot of other things that we are seeing in terms of B2C and B2B startups. But however, when it comes to bio, obviously, it is very different because one is it is mostly science-based, and two is it has much longer gestation period, and three, it requires a lot more capital than what a typical SaaS company would require, right? So all you require in a SaaS company is 5 guys sitting in a garage with the cloud capability, no operational expenses, no salary costs can be quite low, no requirement for any machines or devices, and here you go, up and running, right? Compare that with what we normally look at, when I look at Ahamune, the kind of things that they had to go through. First you do animal test, then you do human trial, then you follow it by the second phase. There's and then you require a whole bunch of laboratory equipment, So this is really, really, for this whole ecosystem to develop, you have to have a strong support, and the government has done a phenomenal job, I would say. And that has kind of given the start that the bio field would require. And when I go visit these incubators and accelerators, I'm sure many of you guys have gone and looked at it. The people are very smart and working hard, and they get all the necessary support, whether it is mentoring support, whether it is industry support, and even VCs see which companies they should fund. But this ecosystem development is extremely important for the entire development of startups in this space. And I think if at all any more money we require more money, to be available for these startups that are there in the incubator. And hopefully, as we go forward, there'll be more such efforts by the government and increased capital also to support these kinds of startups. And the biotechnology parts, again, when I look at recently, we have given a term sheet for an enzyme-based company out of Bangalore Bio Innovation Center. And when I go look at the capabilities and the facilities, obviously, these guys could not have imagined starting up something without those facilities being available. So, these biotechnology parks, with specific focus of industry access and nurturing all these emerging ventures is extremely critical, and we are seeing the fruits of this labor, if I can use the term, of the government putting all this effort in creating these parks and creating these accelerators and incubators, and most importantly, the people, the entrepreneurs and the founders coming and using these capabilities available in these segments. So, as you can see, the landscape is starting to look good. I'm not saying it is fabulous or it is exemplary, but I think it is starting to take good shape. It is getting exciting. We still have ways to go, but nevertheless, there is a lot of reasons to be optimistic about where this is going to evolve and where this is going to go. Now, from an investor perspective, if I have to look at what are the positives and what are the negatives, now obviously the positive is health tech versus biotech, right? As I said, health tech is going to evolve much faster than biotech, but I think health tech will lead to other opportunities that come up in the biotech. So, but we are making a good progress in health tech, and we are starting to see some good progress in biotech, and ideas have to come, in my experience, at least in this space. I think this is deep science. It's not something that you can just think of some idea, just sitting somewhere and then not going through proper thesis, proper research, and then hence you need two things. One is you either need the ideas to emanate from MNCs, people working in various companies, whether it is a health tech or a medical device, Medtronic, Philips, or Siemens gives you those capabilities. If it is in the pharma, working in some of the large companies like Biocon or Ready Labs, although they might be doing developing generals, but there's still a lot of things to be learned, and ideas could definitely emerge from those. Plus, I think we have a good institution capability in life in sciences, right? Although bio is from my understanding, there are about 2,000 plus PhD students, out of which four are from 4% that's from the bio space, but that's a great start. And then more and more, there is more focus on sciences in India as we look forward from where it was before. People, just engineering is not the only. It's either initially it used to be medicine or engineering, but I think with the emergence of a lot of these opportunities, we see more and more people going into PhD in these areas, and that is extremely critical because without ideas, there's no startup without an idea, and that's the genesis for anything and everything that we look for. And if you don't have places where ideas can evolve, ideas can be thought through, there's really no scope for any startups. But there is a healthy environment for ideas to be generated, and that's good news is what I see. And talent, fortunately, in the biospace, I don't see a talent war yet. Most of my companies, whether it's ARM, the enzyme company I talked about, they are able to hire good talent, as opposed to when you look at the true SaaS startups. Because most of my other portfolio, when you look at them and you ask them what is the biggest challenge you're having, invariably it comes down to talent. But in these cases, talent is still available. The cost is not as bad as you see in trying to hire an AI engineer. One of the enzyme company I was talking about, they were trying to hire an AI engineer, and their jaws dropped, seeing what the hell? Why the hell do these guys demand a lot more money compared to our own scientists? And there's really really no good answer for that. But I'm hoping that the software salaries will come down rather than the scientist salary going up. But we'll see where we actually end up in that case. And the talent pool is also there, right? When we talk about engineering talent pool, we always say Bangalore has some 30, 40 plus engineering colleges. And hence we say the talent pool for engineering or these startups is excellent. And similarly, we definitely need a good talent pool. And then, I think India has about 725 plus biotech institutions now. So at least from the devices perspective, there's enough engineering talent available. And even from the sciences perspective, I think it is starting to pick up. So ideas, I think we have a decent base that can improve talent. The institutions now supporting sciences, people wanting to do sciences. I think that augurs well for startups in this sector. And then in terms of capital, I think early stage capital is decent, I would say. But even that, when you get into P-Series A, I think we are getting into trouble. Angel investing is good because angels are excited. They want to support startup. Early stage funds like me, we are excited to do a few, but obviously we can't take huge amount of risk. So, but to a certain extent, this is the largest negative that I would see, that I'll cover more, and I'll give you instances as to why it is still negative. But capital, I would say, is slowly opening up. I'm not going to say that people, the floodgates are open for investment in this space. There's a lot of road to traverse to cover when it comes to capital. We are in the very, very early stages. BIRA grants are helping, angels getting excited are helping. Early stage funds like me looking at investing in the writing the first check, the first institutional check is going to help. But post that is still a question mark. Even for early stage, if you want to raise 15, 20 crores from institutional investors, there are still not that many that understand. So I think capital to me is still, early stage capital is decent. Late stage capital is still a question mark. I think that's the ecosystem that really, really needs to develop for this to take off in India. As I said, BIRAC has done a phenomenal job. I'm sure most of you would have read the report from BIRAC, from where we have gotten these slides. The numbers are looking quite good. Sometimes, yeah, the grants do take time, but they do come. So that's okay. You have to wait. There's nothing you can do. And then what happened in the US in terms of the NSF and the DARPA grants, I think BIRAC is supporting the ecosystem similarly, whether it is giving it for institutes, for research projects, or for entrepreneurs in these incubators or in the biotechnology park. So I think the equity schemes are going well. The fund of funds is happening, and now BIRAC has started. They recently opened up another fund of funds now, which we are also applying for to fund more of startups in this case. But these are all still small amounts, like I said. So this will definitely address the first institutional check problem. But this won't be sufficient to address the later stage investment. And that problem still needs to be solved. So that brings me to the negatives. Obviously, not everything is hunky-dory. I think the biggest negative I see still is capital. Like for Ahamune, when we are trying to raise 15 crores, we really struggled for 6 to 8 months, although Idea Spring was leading it until IIM came on board. There was a hard struggle. We spoke to quite a few VCs. The general answer is, we don't understand the problem. It takes too long. The uncertainties are too high. The regulatory, you don't know what's going to happen. Even if you deliver the product in India, how are you going to get it for the world market? Because then you have to go through the FDA approval or the European approval. So I think there are a whole bunch of issues that needs to be resolved or that needs to be answered for follow-on rounds. We are starting to see some good success stories, like Bugworks is one, iStem is one, Ahamune is one, but there are still, very, very few, and you can count in your two hands, and that is not that's not going to be suffice to build an ecosystem. And one of the key reasons for that is, the VCs like me, and if you look at most of the VCs in India who are funding, they don't have the background. We understand health tech to a certain extent. Devices, we still are very, very confused as to what to do, because, you say, all right, if it's a very complicated device, we ask, okay, will hospitals buy it? If it's a simple device, then you say, this can be replicated very easily, it can be copied, there's no barrier to entry, so on and so forth. But so hence, whether it's device or when it comes to the science part, there's really no VC talent that exists to understand and fund these kinds of projects. And also when you raise the capital from your LPs, 10 years is not sufficient if you want to do life sciences companies. It has to be 15 years of lifetime for the fund. And those things don't happen in India. If you look at the US VC ecosystem, you have doctors or PhDs who have done startups in this space. They come out, they do the funds, they understand this space better, they do it for a longer gestation time. And the amount of capital is also like, the funds is $300-400 million. And hence the late stage capital becomes a lot easier. The early stage capital is also good. The late stage capital also becomes easier. But in India, this is still a challenge. If you want to hence fund this, 2-3 things need to happen. One is you definitely need people from the industry to become VCs, and that trend has to change. And these VCs will then have to go raise capital in the market for a longer period of time to be able to participate in the later rounds, giving larger checks. We have to do that. Third one is we have to go, the existing VCs like me, we would have to go build bridges with investors in the US, right? Saying, why don't you guys come to India? Look at our startups; they are doing well. They are past these phases. This is something that can sell across the world. I think that level of confidence has to be built. What has happened for India in IT services, and then now in products. If you look at Indian product companies, no one will ask a question, can you do it in India anymore, right? In fact, they're saying India is going to be one of the places where all the products are going to come from. I think that trend, that process has to slowly start. So we have to start reaching out to funds outside of India for them to come and invest in the companies in India, because I think Indian funds to be able to raise capital just to invest in this space, it's happening slowly, but that won't be sufficient. So we have a lot of work to do in going and raising capital from the market outside. And also the market in India is very, very hard. Yeah, I mean, we can say what we want. Selling to hospital is very hard. Most of the places there's a price cap on what you can sell, and as we all know, Indian market is very, very wicked when it comes to pricing. And even when we build product companies, we say, look, you can build in India, but build for the world, because for you to, you can get to 30-50 crores of revenue in India. But if you want to get to 200-300 crores, you have to go explore the world, right? Because it's very, very hard to raise capital just in get the decent revenue market in India itself. So I think there is still hence I'm also a little cautious about the market as to where we can sell, how much we can sell, what's the maximum revenue we can generate. And also M&A is still in infancy. It's like as it is M&A even for software companies, I think it's still quite early. Although we see some of the biggies like the Flipkart or Swiggy or Paytm, they are acquiring some companies. But M&A in general is very, very early. But M&A in India is for this space is even more difficult. And these are the things that needs to happen for global funds to come and invest in India, right? So hence, and I think that we have to hence focus on building these aspects in the ecosystem to kind of make this space attractive for late stage investment. So what's the way forward? Like, I think one thing we are extremely good at is frugal innovation. I don't think anybody can touch us in this. For example, Ahamune got to we finished the human clinical trial with only one round of institutional money that is raised. They had raised money from Indian investors in 25 crores plus the grants. And I think when I discuss that with anybody outside world in the US and other places, they say, wow, how the hell do you guys do it? I think we take pride in that. I think we are very good at it. I think we should continue that. Second one, like I said, we need the biocons and the Ready Labs and all the Serum Institute, all of them, the ecosystem to come and participate deeper. I mean, I see that happening. I'm is talking to a couple of other guys, it's encouraging, but that needs to happen a lot more. All of us have to work very hard in getting outside funds to come and look at our sector. Because I don't think if we can't get that excitement like it has happened in the IT sector or in product sector, it'll be very, very hard for us to kind of build a sustainable ecosystem in this particular sector. I think large VCs need to take cognizance, right? If you look at the large VCs in India, they're still very, very gun shy of investing in these areas because of all the problems we discussed, whether it comes to a market, whether it comes to development time, the gestation time. I think it's still very, very hard for them to kind of say, all right, within the life cycle that we have, how do we make money? How do we exit? Who will buy? What's the market? So those questions, tons of those questions needs to be answered yet. Startup friendly policies, particularly in trials, because I've spoken to a few people where they say some of the governing factors for trials in India is still hard. So I've known a couple of companies that are going outside of India, like doing their first trial in Australia. First, because they see some challenges, but I don't think this is such a big problem. It can be very easily addressed. The first, the VC, the capital problem, I think is one that needs the most focus where all of us need to work for. So I'll end by saying, before I take on questions, that I think, India as a strong player, we are very optimistic, and we are betting that this will be the next wave coming in the next 5 to 10 years. It will take time to build it. It has to be fostered. And I think as a community, it's very important that we all take cognizance of this and then do our best to foster this entire sector and build this with all our might. So that's those are all some of the thoughts I had. I will be happy to take questions and delve deeper into greater details as we take questions.
Thank you so much, sir, for this enriching session and sharing your perspective and insights about the funding landscape in biotech and health tech. They were actually a little, I mean, both the positives and negatives were equally covered, and it has given our investors, our audience also a good perspective as to how the sector is performing, what are the opportunities, how are the risks, what the government has been doing. So, thank you so much for that. Now we are just moving on to the question and answers. First question is that we have is as Idea Spring just starting the fund in health tech and biotech, do you leverage other investors to do the due diligence and co-invest, or do you have the capability lead the round?
Yeah. So what we have is we have 3 or 4 advisors, very strong advisors with deep domain knowledge. So we work with our advisors before we invest in any fund, right? Because obviously I don't have any background, to be honest, in life sciences, pharma, and biotech, biotech space. So, but we have 3 or 4 advisors, and we don't normally co-invest. Even if you have to co-invest, we still have to go through our process of getting an okay from an advisor. So we lean very heavily on our advisors to give us the go ahead whenever we invest in any startup.
Great. The next question is, what is the thesis of Idea Spring in health tech, say in surgical solutions, as the regulatory stake is higher, or do you feel comfortable in products with a lesser regulatory stake?
Yeah, I mean, I think the definite bias is for products with lesser regulatory stake, right? Because one of the things we have discovered or seen also is when you build devices for hospitals, it's very hard to compete against the large guys or make an entry into the market, and then fund size also does not enable us to take those kinds of investment decisions. So obviously, our bias is towards products that can get to market faster, and hence with a lesser regulatory space, regulatory hurdle. So that's our preference always.
Right. So how investors look at solo founders?
Yeah, so I think we always prefer anywhere between 2 and 4 founders. Okay, that's a strong preference. Only because I think this journey is extremely hard. Building companies is hard, and it's always good to have somebody to always talk to. So our preference is 2 to 4 founders, not beyond 4 founders per company. That said, there's always exceptions. We will never, if everything adds up, if we like everything else, even if it's a single founder, as long as we can see that there are 2 or 3 other people who are not founders, but who are integral part of the team, that is okay. So we will not, will not say no, but nevertheless, strong preference is when there are at least 2 founders.
At least 2 founders, right. Next question is from Mihir. What is Idea Spring ticket size? I mean, sweet spot in investments for Idea Spring.
Yeah, so Idea Spring, the per company we look at anywhere between 15 to 18 crores over 2 rounds, and then hence the ideal. If you ask me, the ideal will be 6 to 10 crores in the first round, and the delta, whatever rest is in the next round. But that can change depending on the startup, the stage, and so on and so forth. But budget is about 18 crores per startup, and we typically would like to lead the round, be the first institutional round, and typically would like to lead it, but we also co-invest with co-lead with other funds as required.
Right.
Yeah.
Next question is from Arvind. Is there any scope of healthcare equipment's e-commerce startup funding in India?
So I don't do B2C. I have come across marketplaces where people are building products and or solutions which says, if hospitals buy bulk with us, they'll save discounts. But we have not invested in any of those companies as of today. So I am not. I would always look for personal bias preferences for companies that have technology differentiator. So e-commerce is definitely not our strength area. So I think there is opportunities, but that's something we don't actively look at.
Right.
Mm.
Next question is from Rajesh Singh. How early stage biotech startup compete with their competitor?
Competitor where? In the
In the
US, in India, yeah.
in India, of course. Right now, we are talking about the Indian landscape.
No, I think, look, the way we see it is if you don't have a competitor, then there's a problem. You always need to have a competitor, right? So,
Right.
and our belief is if the market is large enough, there's always space for 2, 3 players. And also, hence, I think the key aspect that I talked about, the talent and the team becomes very, very important because whatever the idea, it always boils down to execution capability. So it's okay to have competition, but at the same time, you need to have a team that is supremely competent in terms of execution, in terms of bringing the product to the market on time, a quality product. So I think all these other factors come into building a company. Idea is just a start. I say it's 20% of what would make any startup financially viable, but other 80% is all about execution.
Right.
Yeah.
Next question is from Aparna Das. What are your thoughts on investing in EHR, EMR space in health tech?
So, look, electronic health records, it's like a complex ecosystem. I know the government is also trying to do it to the health stack. The reason I say it is complex is it is such everything is all over the place, right? Patients has to come in, doctors have to come in, hospitals have to come in, diagnostic laboratories have to come in, and these guys don't talk to each other and they don't upload each other. There's no incentive for people. So I think for a private company to kind of enable this entire ecosystem, you've always been very skeptical because of the diversity and most of them, only some people are comfortable in uploading on the smartphone and so on and so forth, right? So I think like Aadhaar and UPI, I think it has to be driven from a government level where it is enforced as a policy. Just an idea or a business trying to do it, I think I find it very, very hard in terms of electronic health records and so on and so forth. We have a lot of companies have tried it, but I have not seen anybody succeed. So we have looked at quite a few companies, but not been comfortable in investing only because of all these questions. I think if health stack were to take off and the foundation layer is given, then building solutions on top of it becomes easier. But that my biggest concern is that.
Right. Next question is, do health tech company needs tech co-founder apart from healthcare founder from investors' point of view?
I think what we look for is always a well-rounded team, right? It's okay for two co-founders to be there with bio with no engineering capability as long as there's an early guy with the engineering capability. But the preference always will be to have the founding team has to basically complement each other. So like I said, if it's a biotech company, one with bio, one with bioengineering company, one with bio and one with engineering always helps. But that said, that is, if you have 2 other guys with strong background, but you have another team member early on in coming in with a reasonable stake in equity, right? They might not have the founder's stake, and the founders have 25%. This person needs to have at least 3 to 5% equity, right? So that way, there's a strong motivation for this person to contribute and also benefit when the company does well. So hence it is not necessary, but it will become very necessary in terms of the equity holding of that person who is complementing the founders, even though not the co-founder title, but at least good equity is what is required.
Right. Okay. Next question is, what is your take on investing in cannabis-based biopharma space in India?
So we have not. I have not invested in any cannabis. I don't have any thesis around it, so I don't think I have a great answer to this question. Sorry. Yeah, I haven't done anything in this space.
Okay. Next that we have is how is the wellness product, especially using AI ML?
We are seeing
wellness space using AI ML basically.
Yeah, using AI ML, right? So this typically very quickly boils down to a B2C play, which we don't play in, right? So wellness, typically you have to reach out to consumers, and I've looked at multiple different wellness products, but typically since it comes down to B2C, we are a B2B fund, it will not fit our thesis. But I think, for the AI ML, it's taking place, but again, the few Healthify and other guys were using AI ML to make sense of what people need to give not just to people and so on and so forth. But I think it'll become a more holistic game. It has to be tied to your device and other things. So it can't be just a software play. I think when you talk about wellness, it becomes, it will become an integrated play, and it has to be connected with your medical records and so on and so forth for it to make more meaningful sense. But that, we don't invest in B2C, so we really haven't gone on that path much.
Right. Next, the question that we have is, it would be interesting to know the main reasons and confidence you built to issue a term sheet to the enzyme company.
Yeah, so I think we were very excited with the team, right? The core team was very, very good, number one. And they already had demonstrated their capability because they had a few active projects going on with a few potential customers, number two. And number three, our evaluation of the market with our advisors showed that there's a huge potential for this. And number four, they were saying they can replace the Chinese vendors' APIs with what we could do. That was very attractive to us. So these are the four reasons why we got very excited with that company and invested in them. And we had a visibility for revenue. See, I think for a fund of our size, the question we also ask ourselves is not only what you do with the money you're raising in this round, what you need to do to raise the next round. What are the objectives and goals you have to achieve to raise the next round? That becomes extremely critical. So if you get that visibility, then it becomes easier for us to invest. And in this case, in the enzyme company's case, we got that visibility as to how they would make revenue. But in our immune case, we didn't have it. That's a risk we had to take, saying, all right, animal trials were going on well. We assumed that we'd be able to do the clinical trials with the money we give. And our belief was once they do the human clinical trials, it becomes potentially easier to raise the next round. We are going to the market now to raise the next round for our immune. We'll see how that goes. That'll tell us a lot about where the Indian ecosystem is in terms of being able to support the next level of funding. We are looking to raise 30, 40 crores now. So we'll see where we go with that.
Absolutely. Next is it a great time to invest in biotech, as there is a talk about funding winter?
Look, I think we always go through cycles, but my belief is a good company with a good prospect will always get funding. Right now, the valuation might be different, right? Valuation expectations has to be tempered down. Money is available as long as the founders are okay with a little less valuation. Because last 1 year it was on the other side where the founders could demand whatever valuation they want. It's now the VCs who will go to demand, but money is available. You just have to, I think things will be reasonable, but you just have to temper the expectation. I think the expectations in terms of valuations had gone bonkers. I think this correction was needed. But you will get good valuation which can be justified. The reason I say this is because people don't realize that if they raise capital at a very high valuation in one round, when they go to the next round, there's not enough justification to demand a 3x or a 5x of the previous round. And when you do the next round, you always have to do at the 3x or a 5x of the previous round for the company to say this is making good progress. And people are not fools, right? If you don't have anything to show, why will anybody give you valuation at $200, $300 million if you have done at $30, $40 million? So it makes no sense. So I think people have to, entrepreneurs and founders also have to temper their expectations on the current round and be realistic that if they were to hit certain objectives and milestones, what is that they will get for the next round? So always look one round ahead. Don't always look at the current round.
And that's a very far-sighted, that's a very far-sighted approach that the entrepreneurs, the founders should actually start adopting.
Yeah.
Okay, next question that we have is, any scope of investment opportunity in government healthcare projects participation company?
When it comes to government, you're always careful, right? I'm not saying we'll not do it. We're careful only because of the scale and the whole process of getting money from the government. Actually, just giving an analogy, we had the same thought on defense as well, but defense is opening up now because defense is starting to buy from startups, and they're also guaranteeing a certain amount of revenue and payments. I think for a startup to survive, ability to sell is very important. And my biggest concern in investing only in government related startups is that can you get the revenues, can you get the papers signed, and so on and so forth, because we know there's whether you like it or not, government has to issue tenders, they have to do this, they have to do that, it'll take 2 years, and
A
that's
lot
not
of
the
processing is
yeah,
required.
a lot of processing is required, and startups cannot work in that space. We need to move a lot faster. We need to see revenues coming in a lot quicker. So I would still be very very guided and cautious in those kinds of investments.
Okay. Next question is from Beena Kumari. As healthcare is moving from hospital to home, how are you seeing self-administration injection devices?
Mm.
What is the biggest hurdle for startups in this device segment?
So I don't know. It's like injection devices. I haven't seen any startup in this space. So pardon my ignorance. I think the closest one we are looking at is one of the companies we are investing or invested is. They were looking for non-prick diabetic measurement, which I thought was a great idea. So I think anything that becomes seamless, which is solving a huge problem that people are willing to pay money for, is always a good thing. But all these things have to come together, right? Ease of use and the cost arbitrage, because as we know, very very price sensitive market. If all these things align, and obviously it's a good space, we'll also look at it. But I've not seen anything in the injectable market, so would love to see what is out there.
Okay. Next question is from Paritosh. As mentioned, at this point of time, VC firms need more human resource from industry. Does a VC firm is more interested to employ employees from incubators, that is people working with healthcare startups, or healthcare industry?
So I think what it comes down to is the knowledge, the domain knowledge that will be required to make investment decisions, right? So what do VC firms do? First is you have to go hunt for the right startups, right? And that you have to do. And once you hunt for the right startup, then you have to evaluate the startup to, based on all the criteria I mentioned before, to say, is this a good investment, including the competitive analysis. And the third one is, once you invest in them, you have to help them grow, right? So anybody who can play part in any of these activities is required. An analyst, for example, is the one that would bring the deals to the table, and then a principal would be the one who can evaluate, do the competitive analysis, and so on and so forth. And the partner is the one who will decide to invest, and the principal and the analyst and the partner will help the company move forward. So it all depends on the role that one wants to play. But if you want to be on a partner track, obviously it's preferred that you have been an entrepreneur yourself. That's my bias, personal bias for anybody in our fund, because once you have been an entrepreneur, I think you appreciate the pain a founder goes through much better than just being an investor. I don't think there's any comparison. People who have just been on the investment side, I think they will be able to empathize, but they'll not be able to sympathize.
Right. Well said. Well said. Next question is, so we have moved towards the startup side of questions. What is your take on wellness beverages?
Hi, I think as I said, consumer. I'm not a good guy on consumer side, but consumer, when it comes to consumers, I think really how well can you market it? It comes down to your marketing and sales play, right?
Right.
There's all kinds of beverages out there. Why do you position? How do you position? What is so significantly different? I think those kinds of questions become very, very important because we have seen quite a few with the mediocre product succeed very well, quite a few with a great product not going anywhere. There are too many parameters outside of your product when it comes to consumers. So, one has to be really, really careful in these kinds of products, because there's so much noise out there. You have to raise above all the noise for you to get anywhere.
Right, right. Next question is, what is your take on the remote patient monitoring startup with B2B model?
See, if if you have to sell through hospitals, I think we really look at what is the incentive for the hospital to sell those products. So yeah, so the sale is what we look at. When it comes to how do you get to somebody, right? And that is one of the biggest issues why health devices are still not taken off, because selling to hospitals is hard and selling through hospitals is also very hard. Because the model just doesn't scale that easily, because who will the doctor recommended, because there's a certain discipline that has been developed by the pharma companies over a period of 30-40 years, and then in a hospital and all the doctors have got used to it. And if you have to break it, and if they have to recommend to it, then you have to see what is happening. But if you say I will sell through companies like Portia or other guys, then you want those guys to kind of be at a certain level. We still don't see that home-based hospital, building a hospital room at homes is still a very, very expensive affair, and in only certain class of people can afford it. So the market hence becomes very small. So those are the key challenges you kind of face in trying to go there, because unless until insurance gives you the money for you to build that in your home, because it will be lesser cost in the hospital, till you have those kinds of policies come in to enable these products to be deployed at home, I think it's very hard. So I think for these kinds of devices to really take off, you need some higher level policy decisions to come into play, saying either insurance guys paying for it or somebody has to pay for it. Otherwise, it becomes very, very prohibitive for people to pay for these things at home.
Right.
So that's the issue. And that has to be solved it's a much bigger issue than what we can bite and chew.
Right. Next question is, what is your take on medical value travel or healthcare tourism startups?
You again end up going to hospitals. So there are umpteen number of guys who have tried these portals and stuff like that. I think it's a solved problem. I would request people not to go dive into solving this problem, because this is already a solved problem. And hospitals themselves have their own cells to reach out. Multiple people refer to hospitals. It's like very, very hard to build a scalable business.
Right.
In this, that's my opinion. I mean, I just want to add a caution everybody that whatever I'm saying is my input, and I've been wrong more times than I've been right. So this is just, please treat it as one input, and this is not, you don't want to make any decisions based on what I'm saying today, but this is just one aspect to consider. So you have to make your own decisions. I never tell an entrepreneur an idea is bad or don't do this. I always tell them, look, this is my viewpoint. Right or wrong, you decide.
You decide, right? No, that's absolutely, it actually depends from person to person how, everybody has had his or her own experiences, and it's completely coming out of experience from you. So it's completely upon our audience how they want to take it, actually.
Yeah, like they say, right? The beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So it's the same thing. Well, what succeeds is in the eye of the founder. So, and they are the ones executing it. And I think a lot of merit is there in that thought process, and we have to all respect it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Next question is, any minimum sample size or patient data that you look for as a validation of SaaS-based health tech companies?
So I think I wouldn't say minimum size. There's no such thing as a minimum size. I think what is most important is meaningful, right? Meaningful size is very important, and then that varies from what we are doing. Like if you're doing radiology scans of heart, what are the different conditions, how much you require for each of those. So it will become very, very specific to the problem you're trying to solve. We have to figure out what is meaningful, and I can't put a number because it changes the use cases. For different use cases, it'll be different numbers. So there's no point in talking about a number. Hence, I would change it and say, whatever you're doing, make sure it is meaningful, statistically meaningful.
Right. Next question is, as a health tech company, revenue is a far side. So when you invest, do you see the site for revenue at the earliest, say in next rounds?
So so in the revenue, where? So can you repeat that?
So when you invest, do you see the revenue at the earliest? Like in what
Okay.
stage you start considering
Correct.
it?
I think, like I said, right, we have to ask ourselves the question as to why people would invest in the next round. In
Right.
Aham, it would be foolish for us to go and say, I need revenue, right? The objective is, we'll raise the next round once we have passed the human clinical phase 1 human clinical trial. And the expectation is once you do that, you'll be able to raise the next round. So I think it is very, very company dependent, depending on the product and the sector. So we all have to understand what is the minimum criteria that we have to hit for the next round investor to get excited, whatever that is, and that varies from company to company.
Company to company, right? Absolutely. Company to company, product to product,
Yeah,
at what stage they are.
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so due to paucity of time, we'll be taking one last question. This is from Syed Ismail. Is 3D printing having scope in healthcare?
I think it does. If we are sending 3D rockets up in the air. If you read about Skyroot, it was a 3D printed rocket. I think it is very, very useful in the when you have to manufacture in small numbers. The question I am still struggling to answer is, when you start, suppose say your product is a hit, what is most cost effective? Is 3D printing more effective, or going to some other manufacturing is more effective? And I give an analogy in the FPGAs. FPGAs are very, very useful in our when you're building hardware, when that you're trying to figure out the algorithm. But once you have figured out the algorithm, you go to ASICs, because that becomes a lot cheaper. The question is, if you want to manufacture in bulk, is 3D printer more cost effective, or some other mechanism was more cost effective? So that's a question I am still struggling to see as to what will be what will make more sense, because 3D printing takes time, cost is higher, and if your product is a hit, you have to move to something else. So that's the dichotomy that one has to figure out. So hence I know 3D printing is useful in small quantities. I don't know what will happen in large quantities.
Right, right.
But if it's a very bespoke thing that you have to develop that you specifically develop for somebody, patient to patient, then yes, then the mass manufacturing will not work. In those cases, obviously 3D printing makes a lot of sense. So hence it really depends on the application, whether it's bespoke that you're doing or mass manufacturing.
Sure, sure. Great. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. With this, we are winding up our today's session, and we are really grateful to you for your time and effort you took to share your wonderful perspective on the topic with us, and addressing so many queries from our audience. Thank you so much, sir.
No, my pleasure. Thanks everybody. It was nice talking to you all, and thanks for your patience.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and hope you enjoyed the session and we actually added value to you. Goodbye, everyone, and have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.